we're here at the Centre for Computing History. We're at the Retro Computer Festival we have on this weekend, and this year it's all themed around 1982. And I'm here with John.
Hi.
Hello, John. And he's brought a few of his machines to talk to us about. So tell us what you brought for us to display.
Well, this machine is a Gemini machine. It was launched in 1982 by John Marshall, who was the guy who started NASCOM.
Okay.
And NASCOM was quite successful, so successful really, it kind of ran out of cash quite quickly, and a receiver was called in. So John's kind of idea was, well, I'll make some peripheral cards to keep all his NASCOM customers happy.
Right.
And he ended up building a computer company called Gemini. So this is kind of how he started, with a rack and cards and things like that. It was very much for the hobbyist.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But as time went on, you know, this machine here on the sorry, let's have a look at that. This machine here on the right is using the same kind of cards, these 18 square cards, but popped in horizontally.
Right. Okay.
And it became much more of a business machine, so it kind of moved over from the hobbyist really world into the business world. But this particular machine is quite rare in a way, because it supports over 700 disk formats.
700.
Yeah. So,
right.
If you've got your CV on a DEC VAX or whatever, sorry, a DEC or a VAX or something, the idea is you look up the disk format here, right. And then you can set it in here by picking one of the 700 disk formats, and you can configure each disk drive to be whatever you want. So we've got an 8-inch drive there, we've got a 3.5-inch there, we've got two types of 5.25. So at the moment we've got a quad density disk in here, a double density disk there, we've got an IBM 3740 at the bottom, and a PC disk at the 5 at the top, 2.5-inch at the top. And when I got this working, it took quite a long time to get this working, but when I got it working with a lot of help from the friends, you know, and what have you, I thought, well, this disk I'd had for a long time as an example of a disk. The idea was to put it on the wall, really, but then I thought, well, now I've got all this working. It did say WS3, so that suggests it's word style, which makes me think it's probably CPM.
Yep.
The size of the disk narrows that down to 1 or 2 formats. So, well, pop it in and see what happens.
Right.
So sure enough, I mean, what's quite interesting, it's a BBC CLP, which I thought might be a computer literacy project.
Yeah.
Who knows? And it's got a signature there, John R. I don't know if it's actually the John R, but anyway. Anyway, so the short story is we pop it in, convert it, and sure enough, it's the draft copy of the provisional content of the television series.
Oh, that's absolutely awesome.
So, you know, what do you do with that? I don't know. It's, I think you've got a copy here already in the museum, but I just thought that was great.
Yeah, it's fantastic. Yeah,
quite
off of that disc.
Yeah, so that's clearly a working disc, you know, God knows how old that is. Yeah, there we are. So that's what it's about, really.
Right. So the hardware is very similar between the two systems.
Yeah, so to get this working, I just took the cards out and popped them in here.
Right.
So we've got an extender here, and that allowed me to put the, oscilloscope on.
Yeah, and see what's going wrong. Okay.
So that's quite good.
Right. Interesting.
Yeah. So I know you've got a Gemini in the museum, but
yeah, we do.
But I don't think it's one of these, is it?
It's not quite the same as that. It certainly doesn't have the hard disk in it. It doesn't have the two. Well, it has I think one floppy drive, but I think a full height one, if I remember rightly.
The hard disk's interesting because when I was getting this working, I was writing a blog about it, and a guy rang me up and he said, "I think I'm the guy who built and tested your machine."
Right.
So we took a card out, and sure enough, there's his initials on the little tested sticker, and he told me what to do to fix a hard drive. You know, he used to earn a lot of money going around. Daniel Jameson's there, was he earned a lot of money going around at the weekends to customers' premises, swapping power transistors in these drives, which are obviously quite fragile. So he told me what to do, and I did it, and hey presto, it's fully working.
It's working.
All the data's there. It's just brilliant.
That's a useful trick to know for probably what are these early MFM drives, I'm guessing.
Yeah, it is. Yeah,
right.
It is. I mean, we're actually image it, which is great.
Right.
So we've got it now for posterity, and if that fails, we can do something about that.
Brilliant. Yeah.
Yeah. And then over on the right hand side, there's a complete change. It's a 1982 Spectrum, or the Spectrum was from 1982. It's hooked up to Telstar, which is a videotech service. So you can get get the latest news and what have you.
So this is, I mean, yeah, okay, so there's something going on here, isn't there?
Yes.
So this looks like it's old, but it really isn't. This is current data.
It is current data. If we go to the BBC News and have a look at here in the UK, we'll have a look at the UK news. And we see it's Sunday the 22nd of May. I mean, the screen's not very clear there, I'm sure.
Yeah, no, so it was working well.
Okay, so that's Telstar.
That's very cool.
Lots of people.
So you've got a mode in there.
Yep.
So it's old school molding. We don't have any telephone jacks around this place, so you're doing some other trickery in the background.
Normally you would plug that into your phone at home and connect to Telstar, no problem. But as you say, we've got no phone lines here. So what we've done is we brought the telephone exchange with us.
Right.
So it's under here.
Sneak peek under the curtain.
That's it. Yeah. So we've got a couple of Raspberry Pis running Asterix.
Right.
And that connects in the same way that the main Telstar telephone exchange connects to Telstar. So we just cut out the loop really. So it's a very local call. Yeah. It's about a metre.
That is incredibly clever, though. Yeah. Incredibly clever, and it's great that you've got something like that working, getting data that is still live today.
Yeah. So I mean. You might recognise that page.
Seen that logo around before?
Yeah. It's a bit out of date now, but it'll get there.
That is very cool indeed. And the Prism modems, I mean, they were really popular at the time, weren't they?
Yeah, they were for the Spectrum. They talked about it as being the most spectacular add-on. Why wouldn't they?
Well, I mean, I've interviewed the guy behind Prism.
Right.
And the whole story behind it is quite interesting. It's on our YouTube channel.
Right.
So I think the marketing slogan was to get the most. To see a Spectrum, you need a Prism or something like that.
Right. Okay.
That was the idea behind the Prism logo. But
we've got tele software on here as well, so you could download it and run things, just like you did in the day. Brilliant. Gateway to the systems as well. So things like NXTEL, which is a video text service for the Spectrum Next.
Right.
They don't have dial-up, but we can dial into it and
you can do it.
Yeah, so it's quite nice.
Excellent stuff. Wow. The old school telephone there.
Yeah.
Just finishing it off just nicely.
Yeah, try to get the period right.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's right or not. Actually.
Very, very cool. Well, thanks a lot for bringing this stuff along today.
Yeah,
really appreciate it. And yesterday we were doing day 2 of this event, so thanks a lot, and we'll go and chat to somebody else. But
great.
Cheers, John. Thanks a lot. So moving on, we have Dave. Good morning, Dave. Day 2 of the exhibition. How was yesterday?
Busy.
Yeah.
Busy. Yeah.
It's good. There's a lot of people in there.
Yeah.
It's really cool.
Yeah,
so tell us a little bit about what you brought for us.
Start at this end. This is a Sanyo MBC 555, which is an almost IBM-ish compatible, but not quite.
Yeah.
Can read and write IBM disks. Runs MS-DOS, but the video system's completely different. It's just not very compatible, and it's really slow.
Yeah, but they look great.
Yeah, it's got a lovely keyboard, really well built, lovely green screen. It's a nice machine, but it's slow.
Just technically not that great, and too incompatible.
Yeah, so scrolling on a text document, it would drive you mad.
Yeah.
So whereas the original IBM was 4.77 megahertz, this runs at 3.58.
Right. So it's not that much slower.
It's noticeable.
But it makes a difference, though. Yeah.
It's basically because the video system was designed for NTSC.
Right.
It uses the same clock crystal.
Yeah, divides down.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Yeah. They are really nice looking machines. I do like these. We used one on the back of one of the scenes in Bandersnatch, but it was fed because the monitor's composite video. We just fed it with another graphic of something. The machine wasn't really working, and it's displaying something the machine could probably never do. But hey ho, it looked good.
Yeah. To be fair to the machine, the graphics are actually quite good.
Right.
They were better than CGA. It could do, I think it was 640 by 200 in 8 colours.
Okay.
But there's just very little software which actually takes advantage of
and I've never seen them with anything other than green screen monitors.
No. You couldn't actually get a proper nice colour monitor which match this,
Right.
but I've never seen one for
No,
sale.
I haven't.
Yeah.
Never seen one at all. I didn't know, in fact, they could. But interesting. Yeah, lovely machines.
Yeah.
So what else do we have?
Well, the Spectrum on the top is, I brought that just to cover up the scratches, really. So it's a nice early one with the lighter coloured keys.
Yep.
Quite a low serial number, in the 8000s.
Oh, yeah.
But it's just missing one key thing, which is the
Oh, the actual board.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. It was an eBay bargain, about 15 quid, so yeah, it'd be rude not to. Next up,
Board
we've got
will turn
the
up.
Grid, which is not
Beautiful.
playing ball at the moment, but at least it's booted into the OS at the moment.
Right.
So yeah, this is an original 1101, which was released in '82. So this is the first clamshell laptop.
Right. Yeah. And beautiful it is too.
Yeah.
So, and very kindly, you've managed to get the one at the museum working for us as well this weekend.
Yeah, well, just had to switch it on. But
Well, yeah, but we didn't have any software on it, and no means to get that software on it. But you've got this little box of tricks down here.
yeah, so this is the floppy drive unit, which
Lovely.
connects via GPIB to the main machine. So yeah, we'll at least be able to back up the bubble memory from
Yep.
the museums.
Oh yeah, can you show us the bubble memory? This is
So
interesting.
this is essentially the storage in the machine. So it has 3 of these, which are 128k each, and that's magnetic bubble memory.
Right.
Don't ask me how it works. There's a good YouTube video which explains it, and I've watched it several times, still don't understand it.
Right.
But yeah, so yeah, it's got 3 of them for internal storage. It's got 256k of memory, 8086 processor with co-processor as standard.
Right.
It runs Grid OS by default, which is a graphical menu-driven operating system.
Right.
Bearing in mind this is 82, 83. They also had essentially an app store as well, which was Grid Central. So what you could do is, because each machine had a modem built in on the back, you could dial into Grid Central, use your credit card and buy applications, download them to the bubble memory, and then back them up to floppy disk later on when you were back at home.
That is incredibly ahead of its time, isn't it?
Oh yeah, yeah. So they had that running in '83 at Grid Central.
And did they actually have credit card processing
I believe
available?
so. Yeah.
Wow. Wow, that is incredibly ahead of its time. Yeah, the App Store before there was an App Store.
Yeah, indeed.
And one of these machines was used on the Space Shuttle, wasn't it? That's where they famously
They
recognised
had
from.
the later model. I think it's the same model the museum's got, the 1128,
Oh, is it?
1129, which is a
Right.
Compass 2.
Oh, I didn't even know that.
Yeah.
Excellent.
There's,
Oh, wow.
I mean, there's quite a history behind with Grid, because obviously they used them on the Space Shuttle famously. President Reagan's nuclear football also consisted of a Grid cupboard. And there's a rumour of later machines being used by the CIA, which the later ones had hard drives built in.
Right.
And they had a big embossed X above the hard drive, and that's where you shoot it to destroy the data. Never seen anything to confirm it, but there's stories that
Really?
we did have them, yeah. Which you could well believe because the military did use them.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, this was high-end computing at that time, you know.
I mean, the introductory price of this in '82 was $8,500.
$8,500.
Yeah, and that was just for the machine. You had to pay extra for the disk drives and
Amazing.
add-ons.
Incredible. I have never seen the disk drive ever.
No, they don't come up that often.
No.
You did have another version, I can't remember the model number, which was a 10 meg hard drive as well. So you could have that on there. And in later years, 83 and 84, they released a small server, which if you had a business with several people running Grid laptops, you could have your own server in your head office, and you could dial in remotely to share documents and store that on the server as well. But very few of them are sold, and very few are around now.
Wow. Yeah, brilliant machines. Love it. And tell us the story about the design of it and not getting pens caught in the lid.
Yeah, famously, it's Bill Moggridge, British designer, who worked on it. Apparently, designed the hinge there, so it's actually sealed at the back, so the electronics aren't exposed. And the idea was, if pencils or anything rolled down there and into that gap, by closing the lid on the laptop, it would actually
Scoop them out.
Yeah, just to protect the machine.
Lovely little design touch.
Yeah, it's quite heavy as well because the whole casing is metal.
Yeah,
and that acts as the heat sink as well for the power supply and the electronics.
Brilliant. Thank you very much for bringing that along. It's awesome to see. So what else do we have?
Next up is a Microprocessor 2, which is, it's very much like the Sanyo. It's an Apple II-ish compatible. It's basically, it runs AppleSoft Basic. The hardware is quite different, which means it's just enough difference to be unable to
useless.
run most of Apple software.
But it does stop you getting sued by Apple, though.
Yes, I think they probably took one look at it and thought, nah,
that doesn't compete.
No, let's not bother with that. So yeah, it's cheap plastic case which looks like it's being reused from a modem. It's got an Apple II-ish expansion slot.
Oh yeah.
So you can get adapter boards on there to use proper Apple II cards. So obviously 6502, 64K of memory, AppleSoft Basic, but it's got no proper text mode like the Apple II. So everything's done in graphics. So it means any text display or scrolling is really slow because it has to do it in graphics. But I think that's partly because they wanted to use it for the Chinese market. So there was an add-on which actually went underneath this, which let you do all the Chinese characters.
Makes sense.
It was designed for education. So original joystick for
That's really cool.
Until you use it. And it's probably the only keyboard which had an external, I was going to say upgrade keyboard.
It's getting there.
Awful.
Does it?
It's worse than the built-in keyboard.
Why? How come?
It's like a Spectrum one, like rubber membrane, but you've really got to press the keys.
Oh, I see.
You need to put some proper effort in if you want to use it.
Oh, that's a shame. They went most of the way there.
They had proper disk drives and printers to match this as well, but they're quite rare to find.
I mean, it's quite interesting, really, when you look at things like that and saying that rubber keyboard there is hard to use. When you go from that to that, you realise actually Sinclair done a pretty good job on the keyboard.
That's lovely to
because
use.
it is really fairly comfortable to use.
Did you get unfair stick Sinclair for the keyboard?
You know, it might not be a full treble keyboard that people would want, but it is really usable.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So what else we got?
Next up is Microprocessor 1 Plus, so it's the machine just before that, which is Z80 Trainer, essentially. So you basically program machine code, or there was optional ROMs for 4 or basic. So yeah, it's just an educational machine, really. And sorry, these are the manuals for the MPF.
Oh, so the other one.
But the whole idea of this was you had the manuals for it, and it was going
fold up. We've got one in the collection. It's really cool. Really cool.
The great little machines.
But, and actually yours is in good nick because this breaks down here. It goes brittle and cracks
these are
quite
super
easily.
Brittle. And there was add-on boards, so you've got an expansion header there, so you could have a ribbon cable over to little printers, EPROM programmers, boards with sensor inputs, outputs. Again, for education.
There was other similar things, wasn't there? I mean, Open University had the Hectors for doing this sort of stuff, which is a little bit similar. There's a few others as well that I can't remember off the top of my head, but sort of training and introductory machines that got you to grips with the hardware more than the software, really. You know, it was about the architecture and it was about how a computer works, which is something that we're kind of lacking these days. But then saying that, it was much simpler then. So how you get into how the latest machines work is a bit more complicated. Anyway, right.
And then the last machine is the Sirius 1.
Lovely.
So yeah, that's my one, and that's Adrian's machine. So again, again, 8088 processor, running MS-DOS, but not IBM compatible.
Yeah. Compatibility back in the early days here was a bit problematic, wasn't it?
Yeah.
There were attempts to do it.
I mean, it was a far superior machine. Serious. Ran at the same clock speed. Had up to 640k of RAM, which is more than anybody would need, apparently. High resolution graphics, so it'll do 800 by 400 pixels, and that was standard on this. The floppy drives use standard 5¼ inch double-sided, double density, but because of the encoding, it uses GCR encoding and variable speed read and writing. It can actually store 1.2 megabytes on a single double-sided disk.
Which again, for that time, was a lot.
Yeah,
a lot. And it's like the apricots and things, because there is a relationship between Sirius and apricot. Their 3.5 inch drives also variable speed, which does make them a little bit tricky to.
Yeah, well, these are a nightmare to image disk for. It's only recently with the likes of the Grease Weasel driver adapter boards you can actually read the disk.
But Grease Weasel does it. Well, I haven't even looked into that yet.
As of this year,
right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
Good.
And it's also got a codec, so it can actually do audio recording and playback. So
right.
I am the Victor 9000, the #1 choice in business computers.
Which for 9882 is pretty impressive.
Very.
Yeah.
Very. But that is a sample.
Yes.
Because it sounds pretty synthesized, doesn't it?
Oh yeah. But there's a header on the motherboard. I don't know of any hardware which took advantage of it, but it was actually an audio input.
Right.
So you could actually record audio straight to disk on it.
That's ultra impressive.
Yeah.
8-bit, but what frequency was it?
The CPU?
No, the audio recordings.
I don't know.
It's probably going to be something like 8K or something like that, maybe.
Yeah.
And hence the sounding like a synthesized voice.
Yeah.
Very, very cool. So I didn't know they could do that. That's all.
Yeah.
I had no idea.
Yeah. So this one machine was originally a hard drive unit. So there was a 10 megabyte hard drive in the MFM drive, which failed. So this has got an MFM emulator fitted.
Right. Yeah.
So it's just images on there. It's actually a Linux board which runs it.
Yeah. The MFM emulators are crucial, because MFM drives now, they're all on their last legs.
Yeah. Unfortunately, we think another one's gone down next door. We'll
talk to him about that in a minute. He's not very happy about that, so we won't talk about that on this particular segment.
Yeah.
But have you taken any decent photos of the place?
I've taken one or two, yes, but I've put some effort into it, which you have to do this. So I'm using a Sony Mavica floppy disk. So this stores on.
So a digital camera that stores on floppy disk.
Yeah.
Absolutely perfect for this event.
Yes. It's great because when you power it up, it says 2.5 hour battery life. It's currently showing 358 minutes. So something's not quite right there.
I'm not going to
go with that. But the quality's awful. But what do you expect? 20 odd years old.
But I mean, that was the early days of video sort of digital cameras for us.
Yeah.
So great stuff. Love it. Well, thanks, Dave. Thanks for coming and bringing all this stuff along to the event.
Having us.
And hopefully we'll see you at the next one.
Yeah.
Cheers. Okay, one of the next exhibitors, victims that we have is Johnny Blanchard. Morning, Johnny. How you doing?
Not bad, yourself?
Good. You've got some pretty unusual machines here. Hitachi there, Thompson. Tell us about them.
Yeah, so obviously, as always, I'm very much the international corner of the exhibit, eschewing most of the UK-based computers. I mean, we've got a kind of range of ages as well. So this is our event-relevant computer. This is a 1982 Hitachi, but it's
never seen one.
It's the follow-up to this, I think, more interesting machine.
Never seen that either.
Which is effectively Japan's first commercially produced all-in-one computer. Before this point, they were importing machines, things like the TRS-80, or it was all kit computers. This is a machine that's an all-in-one, and it's based around Motorola's first real ever commercial chip as well.
So
So it's kind of a first. So that came out in 1974. This came out in 1978.
Right.
So it had been around for a while when it came out.
That's early.
And then in 1982 they released this, which, as you can see, hasn't got all the lovely metal plating because this is a mass-produced one.
Like you say, I think that the first one there is all the better for it.
It is. Slightly bumped specs, a bit more memory. This one's got 8K. You could get a colour kit for this one. I don't own it, but it's possible. But yeah, this whole series didn't do great because of its restricted ability to use kanji character sets and things like that. So other companies like Sharp and NEC, they did better in that area. And they took the cake quite a lot.
Right. That's a shame because they're nice looking machines.
They are nice.
And yeah, it's like you say, especially the original.
The original was lovely
because it's so sort of utilitarian. And yeah, lovely. And is this connected to one of these?
To the
so that is.
So we're official for the show.
You're stuck to the rules.
This is the one game I've ever found for this, and it's more of a modern game made by someone a couple of years ago.
Right. So. Okay. So software for these is few and far between then.
It is. There's a lot of type-ins, and I found a lot of magazines, but no type-ins.
Okay. Yeah, lovely. Okay. So what else do we have?
Oh, the lovely French computer, the Tier 7. This again is a bit cheap. The Tier 7 is very much a 1982 machine.
Right.
But this is the slightly revised 70 model. But we're still running software that could have run on the Tier 7.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's the same design. You wouldn't be able to tell. In a dark room, it would be the same. But these are wonderful French computers. We don't really see a lot of the French computers over here.
No.
Because obviously things like social media and stuff didn't exist back then, so we missed them. But Thomson made an amazing range of computers. This is one of their more commercial ones. So it's got like a built-in light pen.
Oh wow!
Which is a lovely aluminium design there, so rather wonderful.
That's interesting. I have never seen that before. Built-in light pen.
Yeah, and a lot of software was made to take advantage of it. In fact, if I reset out of Choplifter and go back to the main menu, this thing could, if you had a CRT, you could select those options using the light pen. That's what those little squares next to them are.
Right.
And this is a little like drawing style thing.
Okay, so you take the pen out, point it on that one there.
So we
can't do it because it's LCD.
It won't work on this because it's LCD, but yeah, you kind of do that and you just select your options, and a lot of software took advantage of that.
I've never seen that.
Things like air traffic control software and stuff that you could do, simulators, and apparently some actual software that you offer air traffic control was made for this as well. So
really,
and this is all running from a Mega ROM, which is obviously a modern flash cartridge for it.
Yeah.
But this goes in this little memo socket, which is a cartridge system that Thomson had for some of their machines.
Right. Yep. That's really neat, though, isn't it?
Yep.
Really neat. Excellent.
If we turn this off and unlock this, that will eject, and there you go. These lovely little cartridges.
So what's the electrical connection on that? Oh, I see. Yeah, I'm with you. Oh, that is very clever.
I mean, you know, they didn't want to sully the design by showing metal pins on one side.
No, absolutely.
And then just slides in.
So it's done with the pressure, right? Yep. So there's just the pressure of the lid.
There's a little lip inside there which pushes the cartridge down.
Beautiful.
And that'll almost certainly work.
Really nice.
It works.
That's clever. Like that.
Blows up. Yeah.
Brilliant. Brilliant. I like that joystick as well.
Yes, the wonderful cheated ballistics, which, as everyone knows, and no one will disagree with me, is the finest gamepad ever made for an 8-bit system.
Is there some sarcasm in that? I don't know. I detected a little bit of sarcasm.
I did used to take a mick out of this joypad a lot, but in fact, having used it a lot now, I'm actually I really like it.
You're eating your words.
It's so small, but even my hands, which are quite large hands, they fit really well. It's really odd. It's especially good for isometric stuff. 720 is really easy to play with.
I've just realised it's all off thingy, isn't it? Right. So the D-pad there is all at sort of 45-degree angles. Interesting.
I'm a fan. I've become a fan.
You're a convert.
I'm a convert for that joypad.
After slating it for so many years. Right. Moving on.
We're back onto one of my favourite ranges of computers whatsoever. This is back to Japan, obviously. Now this is our region correct machine. This is our 1982 machine. machine. This is the Sharp X1. It's got a built-in cassette deck. This is motorized. It was on. You could push this button and it would eject it. It's probably, if you owned Sharp hi-fis at that point, you'd probably recognise
the tape.
And that's because it is exactly that.
It is the same mechanism.
It is the same mechanism. That's because this wasn't made by their computer arm. This was made effectively by their consumer products arm.
Right.
Because they wanted a computer that would do things like credits and VCR control and some simple gen locking and stuff like that. And the MZ computer people weren't interested in making something like that because it's a fairly niche area to do things, so they made their own, which eventually competed with their own computer.
I was going to say, I mean, how did that even come to be?
It's an odd decision. It's Z80 based again, just like the MZ range, but better graphics, better sound, and we know that there was obviously some turmoil about this because the computer arm eventually had to release an MZ with better graphics and sound. So the 800 and the 1500 had better graphics and sound to compete with their own machine, and obviously that's not really a winning strategy.
No, it's crazy, crazy, but you know.
Yep. Now we're not actually using this to play this game, although this is a region, a year correct game.
Right.
We're using this one because this is the last of the X1s that are released. This is the twin. It looks a lot like an X68000, but you see that styling coming in.
Yep.
But it is one of these, just Z80 processor still, but it's got a PC Engine slot in the bottom there, so you play PC Engine games. Much like the Mega PC, it is two separate machines crammed into one case.
Oh, okay.
So it's got its own joystick port and everything.
Right.
But this one's vastly easier to get any kind of signal out of because it's got composite in the back.
Right.
And just seems to work on anything. You throw any screen here and it just seems to
He's
show
happy with it.
So,
right, okay.
Whereas this one requires lots of weird dongles to get a decent frequency range out of it and things like that.
Right. Interesting. They are lovely bits of kit. I'll give you that. Yeah, I've always liked the Sharp ones. Like you're saying, things like the Sharp MZ700, which my uncle bought back in the day. You know, I was quite excited to go over his and have a go with it. And I was kind of, even then, as somebody relatively young then, was kind of underwhelmed by it. The graphics were, you know, minimal. Bearing in mind, you know, how much he had paid for it and how new it was relevant to what I had. But yeah, so that's an interesting story as well. That they've got their own two departments fighting against each other.
It's an odd decision. These never actually made it out of Japan though.
Right.
So the difference with the MZ range is that was of course worldwide.
Yeah.
You could get it in most countries.
Yeah.
But yeah, these didn't make it outside of Japan, and they were probably quite expensive as well. But Japanese households at that point probably had more disposable cash than a lot of other countries did.
Right.
So you can kind of understand why this thing, which was designed for the home market, this was more prosumer video, like local small video production, or maybe small broadcast house would have had these, and they would fit right in with a trolley, a video trolley.
Oh yeah.
And whereas this was really designed for the home. That's where it's got the game, the PC Engine built in, and everything. So this was designed more for the home. But still would have been probably too expensive for most European households.
Yeah, absolutely. Very nice.
Joy Pad, which is the rather weird Sony Joy Pad, which has this weird bit of plastic to help you move around, and it really doesn't. Yeah. Although it's still quite a good Joy Pad when you get past that point.
I think we've got one very much like it, but it's not branded Sony, was it?
You probably got it for the NES. So
yeah,
yes,
that's right.
There was. This was made, I think, by Mitsumi.
Right.
And Sony branded this one, and there's also a non-Sony. I can't remember who branded it off for the NES, but it's called the NES Advantage.
The NES Advantage, that's right. Yeah.
It's the same in size.
Of course. Good stuff. All right. Well, thanks, Johnny, for bringing all this stuff along. Really, really appreciate it. We're on day 2 at the minute, so you've got lots of people waiting to chat with you and find out these stories. So thank you very much for bringing it, and yeah, see you at the next one.
Thank you.
Cheers. So this is a machine a lot of people will recognise, and so is that. And this is Tom from Wi-Fi Sheep, who's brought these machines in for us. Thanks a lot, Tom, for doing that.
That's all right, no problem at all.
So tell us about it. What's going on here?
Okay, so we'll start with the first machine here, which is pretty much stock.
Right.
Not really had any modifications within. It's been repaired inside, but it's pretty much stock inside.
Okay.
And we're running with an Amx mouse, which I know you have a version exhibition at the museum as well. This is the later mouse. It looks a bit more like the Archimedes mouse that followed it.
Yeah.
And it plugs into the user port of the BBC Micro. The problem with that is that a lot of modern BBC Micro add-ons, such as SD card readers or the MMC system, use the user port. So you can't have an SD card system replacing your floppy drives and a mouse at the same time. The solution is to use what's called a GoTech, which emulates a floppy disk drive. It plugs into via ribbon into the floppy disk controller of the BBC, and then you can load what's called SSD files, which are floppy disk images, on USB straight into the machine. The computer still thinks it's a floppy drive; it knows no better, and you can then remotely load data. And that's what we've done here to load the Super Art package. And we have a full point and click system with the mouse, and I can double click the art icon, and we've got a painting package.
Great.
An early pixel painting package. I've also got a quick mod here, so we're actually running 2 screen displays at once. The first one here is coming out the normal RGB connection. It's going into a SCART connection into this HD converter. It's coming out as HDMI. It's then going into another converter, converting into VGA to a VGA monitor.
It takes half an hour for the data to travel from the BBC to the screen.
There is a slight delay, I'll admit.
Is it? I didn't notice it, but.
And then I have, this is a very cheap and dirty hack which you can do very easily to get colour composite out, and it goes through the RF modulator box, which used to be used for tuning analog UHF TVs, and you can actually cut the feed because it's actually composite it's fed with, and you can feed that straight into the video jack, and you can get a very cheap and dirty PAL signal out. So that's what we've done with this machine. The second machine, a little bit more advanced. Take the lid off. It has what's called a video NULA graphics card. This replaces the stock ULA graphics chip. So it's a brand new card, and it allows the bead to go from its traditional 8 colours to over 4,000 colours, customisable per program you want to use. And so we actually have here on screen, this is just a cube demo. And I can press space to load some Elite chips, and you'll notice there's shades of grey. The BBC Micro cannot do grey, but it can if you have the graphics card fitted. So very cool. Roughly what we've got going on.
So is that board still available? Or is
I believe so. It's created by a chap called Rob Coleman. It's a good friend of mine, and he does occasionally put them out on eBay. So it's just have a look on eBay. They're not that expensive, and he gives you the board and he gives you an EEPROM ROM to fit as well. So I'd highly recommend it, especially as these machines are getting older, and ULA chips especially are now burning out or failing. It's well worth looking for modern replacements.
So in terms of just running standard software games and things like that on it, it still does those fine.
When
it
you
doesn't
boot
try and recolour them or anything like that.
No, when you boot it up cold, it creates the correct 16 colour, 8 solid, 8 flashing, but then you can start recolouring things. Also, it means you can actually set up your own custom palettes to recolour existing games without needing to modify the game code. A good example would be the SimCity that came out for the Beeb. Was gory, had this red land and bright cyan scene. It was really bright. I have a custom palette which I set up so I can have greens and greys, and it looks much better. So it's a really great system, and I'm pleased I adopted it and at least had it fitted to one machine.
Very clever. And it's nice to see these machines still being, advanced, for want of a better word. People upgrading them, making new boards for them. I mean, the BBC Micro probably has to be one of the most, active machines for upgrades and stuff. And they're really, really cool. So you can get boards that replace the co-processor that was available. So, do you have one? Oh, look, and there's one in it anyway.
There we are.
So a board here that is based around a Raspberry Pi that is basically every co-processor there ever was,
and more.
And more. So incredibly cheap.
And then that's the MMC system I was talking about. So that's why we can't run a mouse on this machine, because the SD card system is taking up the slot. But
Good stuff. Right. Well, thank you for bringing these along. Really appreciate it, and hope you've had a good time this weekend and been talking to people. Probably got a bit of sore throat by now, I imagine.
Just a little bit, but not as bad as I've had in previous years. But it's been an absolutely fantastic show. and I think
Good.
all credit to you at the museum for putting this on.
No, it's our pleasure. We've got to credit Tony for that. He does most of the hard work on these events, so we just host it. So yeah, and we'll go and speak to Tony in a little bit. But anyway, thank you very much indeed. All right, thanks a lot. Okay, so the person that has all this lovely stack of machines here is Pete.
Hello there.
How you doing?
I'm good.
Good.
Enjoying myself.
Good. Tell us a little bit about what you brought for us.
Okay, well this display starting here is basically showing how if you wanted a computer and you couldn't afford a certain premium, that you had to make, you had to cut corners. So you had basically awful keyboards is the name of the display.
Well, hang on a minute. We were talking about this particular machine with Dave earlier on, and although they are rubber keyboards, yeah, they're not the full motion keyboards, but Spectrum did it pretty well actually.
Yeah, no,
they were quite
did.
usable.
Well, especially when you look at the sword as well, because I haven't got particularly chubby fingers, but even my fingers are pretty much, and they're so light as well, you could easily just roll over and look up and you've typed something completely off. So what you're saying about the Spectrum one, where they're so raised, you do actually know if you pressed a wrong key.
Yeah, they weren't bad.
So yeah, they're pretty fairly nice. Well, other than the Tomy Tutor, or the Tomy Pewter, as this one is.
Oh, hello. So these are pretty uncommon.
Which is an 82 machine. It is actually an 82 machine. And again with an awful keyboard. But this is basically a TI-99.
Right.
It's the same chip. It's not compatible, but it's the same chipset.
Right.
And when you boot it up, it's even got the same boot screen as you get on a TI-99.
Okay.
Which is quite lovely to see in a machine like this.
Yeah.
So that was only in Japan. That was the Tomy Pewter in Japan. PYUTA.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah.
UUTA, one of those.
Pewter.
And it was released in America as the Tomy Tutor.
Right.
So yeah, both sides.
And they are very few and far between these days. Well, at least over here they are.
Yeah, I mean, I've only ever seen one other, and Tony Jules got that.
Right.
Which is unsurprising. Really. Loves all that. And then yeah, just the new brains just set up running just basic really.
Yeah. So that's another machine that doesn't get a lot of attention, is the new brain.
No, I mean this was what started off the BBC schools initiative. Wasn't it? They were the ones that were originally going to get it.
Yeah.
And then that's when the argument was from Sinclair and Acorn and Dragon as well. They should say, well, if the BBC's putting its name to it, you should at least invite other people in to tender for it, because otherwise it's showing clear favouritism.
Yeah.
So yeah, these guys, this would have possibly been the model that ended up in your schools.
It could have been the Beeb.
Could have been the Beeb. That could have been.
Yeah. So this version is the one without the screen, because they also have a screen that can go in. Oh,
So
you've got
that's
the other one
Model
there.
A.
There you go.
And there's the Model AD.
Yep.
Which has also got the screen in it.
So what was the screen used for? Because clearly, you know, it's one line of text.
It's got everything you need on it, but as one line of text at a time. So if you write your program, you can scroll up and down to see it.
Right.
But yeah, if you've written a pretty big chunk of program, you're literally just scrolling and scrolling and scrolling and then scrolling all the way back down again. But I mean,
quite limited. So what was the idea behind having a screen in it at all?
Hasn't the museum got a battery-powered one?
We do.
So they were originally meant to be more portable than they actually are. So that was the idea, where you could sort of program on the go.
Yeah.
But from what I remember, the battery life was only 3 minutes.
5 minutes. Yeah. So I think these were going to be used a lot in the medical industry.
Oh, okay.
And they were the idea is you can take it around with you and bring up the data on that little screen as a little portable computer.
So you're asking me questions that you know the answer to, which is what I like, because you can jump in.
I'm trying to create content here, man. I wish that's coming out. It's been edited. But yeah, as far as I'm aware, anyway, it was originally. And we've got some videos of these being used in like pharmacies and stuff like that. You know, somebody's just walking around from bench to bench with them. In what way, I'm not quite sure. But yeah, nice machines though. Really hard to work on, aren't they? Because they've got like layers of board boards inside them.
Yeah, there's 3 layers of board, and the heat that comes out of the regulators on them is nothing short of nuclear. I mean, it's like touching the sun, and I'm not even joking, it will take your skin off in less than a second. So they all go to, this back plane here is basically all heatsink. All along there. So the regulators are these 2 screws, these 2 screws here go to the regulators. All the rest of that is heatsink, and even that gets warm. That warms up,
No, good little machines. Do like them. Do like them, especially the ones with the displays in them as well.
I don't actually find them that bad to type on.
They're all right. They're kind of chiclet keyboards, aren't they? They're proper. These are hard plastic keys, whereas the ones that went before were sort of rubber keys. But there's full movement on them, and they're not bad. They're not bad. Okay, so moving on.
What else we got? Coleco or Coleco, however you like to.
It's Coleco. There is no other way to say it.
Coleco. This is a remake by a chap called Mike, who goes under the blog name Leaded Solder.
Right.
So he's made this remake of it, which is quite a nice little board actually. It takes USB inputs, and instead of Coleco controllers, it uses VCS controllers.
Right.
Because what he found was, if you built this and then needed to buy a Coleco controller, it's cost you about 4 times the price of the boards just to buy the controller. So it runs through the VCS, and it's a really fun little machine, which is basically a modern day version of this. So the console was released in '82, but this being obviously a computer show, I can bring a console. So the Adam module 3 for it. So this bolts onto there. And then
because there's a slot at the front, and it's there, isn't it? I think.
So all this is just an expansion unit for what was the Adam computer. They saw people who had the consoles and thought, we can't sell them another computer on top of the console, so we make this module for it. But when you look at it, I mean, I couldn't afford. When I was a kid, I couldn't afford a desk to put that on.
I was going to say it's pretty deep once you've got it all there. So we got
and you've got a foot pedal here. I mean, obviously this is for the steering wheel. But so it even expands onto the floor. I mean, how cool is that? And then you've again then got another expansion, which is the VCS expansion, so you can play your Atari games on it, and that bolts onto the side. That can either go onto the Coleco.
I was going to say that went on the front as well, didn't it? So
so it can either go on the front directly without the Adam on the side of the Adam. But again, it's just bits bolted to other bits, and
it's great.
You can't put your monitor on top of here because that's where your keyboards go and your cartridge slot is. You can't put your monitor on top of here because that's where your modem output is and your other peripherals that you get.
Right.
Oh, there's a data cassette.
Yeah, data cassette there.
Just there.
You could take 2 of them.
Yeah, so mine isn't fully expanded.
Yeah, but
thanks for pointing that out.
No, it's important. Your collection is incomplete. But I mean, ours hasn't got 2, and actually ours is a bit of a steak compared with yours. But why would they have had 2 data recorders?
Probably, a little bit of backup.
For backups, right, okay.
But I think even the modem's quite rare now.
I've never seen a modem.
It looks so much like a cartridge, and 20 years after you've left your parents' house, they're going through, seeing this, another one of those Adam games, throw that
Chuck
away,
it out.
But again,
it's a nice system.
So you can't put a monitor on top of there. So it's got
it's
got to be to the side of it, and then you've got your keyboard to the side of it. So if you think about it, you've got your keyboard there with your monitor. This system here, that's how big your desk, or you're going to have it in front of your living room telly.
I've got to stand back a bit to get it all in on the camera.
Just a crazy size.
Yeah, it is. Not much thought went into the real estate this thing needs, but it's a nice system. It's much better than ours. Ours has got a broken cassette thing there. We haven't got 2 tapes on it either. It's just that bit's broken, and ours is all a bit messy. But so it's nice to see one in good nick like that. Lovely.
Yeah.
So that's cool.
I think a lot of people have got Oryx here, the Oryx one.
Yeah.
Which is obviously the. People don't like the keyboard on this, I don't mind it.
Right.
Again, there's probably going to be endless comments of what's this muppet talking about. He doesn't mind that keyboard, but I don't. But obviously then they brought out the Atmos, which to me was one of the best upgrades you could get for a computer, where they clearly saw there was a fault for it and what people were struggling with. So they brought out a lovely little keyboard for the Atmos, like the upgrade, and they made it in those lovely red and black colours as well.
Yeah, look cool.
Striking as well as a nice keyboard. So
red and black was so 80s.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, they're good little machines.
But yeah, it's a nice little.
What you need for them is some sort of a modern way of getting the games into the like Oric adapter, so you can load games in, because they're a bit of a pain to load.
But Dolo was here yesterday. He had all that set up.
Yeah, Adrian, one of the volunteers at the museum. Oh, well, one of the staff of the museum, I should say. Sorry, he does get paid.
You should.
Well, I mean,
says otherwise.
He shouldn't get paid, mate. I'm telling you. But yeah, he has one as well, and it does make it sort of a whole lot more fun with being able to load these games into them. So good stuff. All right, and then we had a big metal behemoth.
Right, and then lastly we've got the Torch communicator. This isn't actually mine. This is Sam Battle, who works. This museum is not obscure, which is in Ramsgate in Kent, and from Look Mum No Computer. So this is his one. The story behind this was there was someone was doing a house clearance, and up in the attic they found all these computers. And I mean, this attic had a huge loft conversion,
right?
And it was just a huge space, like ridiculously so. It was full to the brim of computers, just of all different states, and they were all going to go into the skip.
Right.
And it was one of Sam's friends had the job of doing the clear out, and he just said to Sam, "Oh, do you want some of these computers?" So the fella just filled up his van, essentially, bought what he could out of Sam, but Sam didn't even get half the collection. The rest just had to go into the skip. And you're talking, there was two of these, there was two serious computers, endless pets, there was XD Sorcerer in there, and it was just one of those heartbreaking things where you don't let yourself think too much about what went into the skip.
Well,
try and think of all the generic, not even the generic ones that would break your heart to think about.
You've already upset me deeply, so
don't.
So we'll finish this interview here, I think.
But back to the Torch. This is one of the most fascinating machines that I think I've seen in a long time. It's one of those machines that you think they built it because they could, and not because there was much point to it in some degrees. Because I mean, the back of it, I don't know. I mean, it's got a bit of a
bit rusty, but patina, nice. But it's not the Antiques Roadshow, mate.
It's basically made out of like tank metal.
Yeah.
So thick and heavy. But if we look in the back here, so that's basically, it's a BBC Model B board.
Yeah.
I don't know, can you, if you point down to the connections down here, they haven't even removed the connections off the BBC board.
No.
They've just made bent some aluminium in and made their own fittings and fixtures in there. When you think this was a time of cost cutting, yeah. Cost cutting?
Yeah.
Cost cutting? Yeah. When people just wire wires onto there and just bodge wire everything in.
Yeah.
They've put so much time and money into doing that.
Yeah. But they were expensive, these things. These were sold into, in quotes, the professional market, where, businesses wanted a machine that could do CPM and run business packages, and was built to be abused to a certain extent. That's what this is for. So the cost wasn't so much the issue. But there's some really nice little design features on these things in the way they work. So I don't know if you've ever noticed, but if you put the lid back on, yeah, not easy. And that's the CPM board there, I should just say. Let's have a look at that.
Z80 board, and then you've got the Lucy.
Yeah, Z80.
You've got the Lucy chip on top of there as well.
Yeah, but ours doesn't have that. I'm not sure what that's about.
A Teletext board, I think,
right.
Or a Presto board.
Right. And a cub monitor built into it. So, yeah, they are big. But when it's on your desk, if you need a bit of desk space, because the thing is, when you were using your desk back then in the 80s, you weren't always just doing computing. You might be writing on a piece of paper. I mean, we don't do it anymore, but we did do that once. So if you want your desk space back, if you just take that and put it up there. if you look at the edges there, they should, because you've got the cable trapped underneath, but they fit perfectly. So it was designed. Let's have a look at the other end. The other end's doing it properly. Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
Oh, perfect. Yeah,
so, and it just sits up there and is out your way, which is just like really nice little touch.
Yeah. And the good thing is, if it ever breaks, you've got yourself a free boat anchor as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, you know, what more do you want from the machine?
If you write a program on it and you want to kill yourself, you can drag it around, attach it around your leg, jump in the river.
Strap it to yourself and jump away. Yeah.
I mean, they are a bit of a beast, but you know, they serve that purpose, and it was the beginning of Torch. I mean, they based their first machines on the BBC Micro with the CPM addition, so you could run, again in quotes, business software. But then they went on to make sort of other completely different Unix machines, and you know, and did a lot of business. So they're an interesting thing, like you say.
And you're always going to have that base of a very well-built machine of your first one. So that's what you're going to be known for. Yeah. We only look back now thinking, oh, this is why did they waste money, spend money, doing all these bits and bobs. But at the time, people were looking at that thinking, my goodness, that's really well made.
Yeah. So. And you bought one product. You bought the Torch computer. Yeah. You didn't have to go and buy a screen. You didn't have to go and buy anything else. It was all there, ready to roll. Yeah. Plug it in, and away you go. So brilliant. Right. Oh, and the old jack plug there. That's for the modem, which again is built in. Don't know if I can focus on that. But that's what we used to use in the UK for our phone plugs back in the day.
It's funny, isn't it, when even a modem plug gives you nostalgia. Can't go wrong with that, can you?
Everything gives me nostalgia. Anyway, thank you very much.
Yeah,
cheers, Pete. Thanks very much for bringing all this stuff along. Really do appreciate it, as usual. And we'll see you again in the next one. All right, cheers. Okay, so next we have up is Tony Jewell, who has basically put this whole event together for us.
My pleasure.
Our favourite volunteer at the museum, which I always say is not really. But anyway, Tony, tell us about what you have here.
Okay, so to begin with, we have the Black Dragon. I didn't paint this black. Somebody else had a very yellowed dragon a few years ago and sprayed it black, and I wanted it, so I bought it off them. And this is the machine. This is probably the most upgraded dragon known to man, this one.
Oh, wow.
So we've got a few things going on in here. This is a Raspberry Pico microcontroller that is sitting between the processor and the Dragon's old graphics chip over here, and is basically emulating the graphics of the Dragon. Now, the Dragon famously has shaky, wobbly graphics. If you look here, this is the output from the Dragon normally, and this is the output from the Raspberry Pico.
Right.
So this is outputting VGA into there.
But see them side by side there.
Because it's all emulated in software, I can do stuff that no Dragon has ever been able to do. So I can change the border colours. Things I wished it could have done back in the day, I can change the background, and I can change the fonts. And so now it's a Z80 Expansion kind of Dragon. And there's the original display over there.
Wow. And that's impressive.
What I can also do now is I can change the colours in games to make them better. So, that's on. So I'm going to load Chucky Egg, which is a good classic Dragon game. Let that load up.
So this is loading, I assume, from that SD card there?
Absolutely, the SD card here. So that's a floppy disk emulator full of disk images.
Right.
And again, you can see old Chucky Egg, new Chucky Egg.
Wow.
Takes a couple seconds to load up. There we go. So basically what I've done is I've got rid of the classic Dragon green background and replaced it with a black background. So all I've done is I just swap around the palette. So the microcontroller here, when it sees a request for green, it sends out black instead.
Right, okay.
And that creates that display there.
That's impressive. And this is actually a true two-screen setup, isn't it?
Yes.
So, you know, you can control one screen separately from the other.
I can. Yeah, absolutely.
On a Dragon 32, who would have thought?
Yeah.
Wow.
So if this is, I mean, there are other things inside here which I could go into. There's Wi-Fi sitting down there.
Right.
There's this board here. It gives me an MSX chipset, so I can have sprites and colours and all that sort of thing, and multi-channel sound. So yeah, it's a nutty Dragon, this one.
There's not much of the Dragon left, it has to be said.
Yeah, there is always that worry that I can pull the Dragon out and all the upgrades would just continue working on their own. Yeah. This, alternatively, this would be your peak Dragon 1984, perhaps. So everything here is period. So we've got floppy drives, and inside this one, we've got a Dragon Plus board. So what this does is it gives it an extra 64K,
right,
and it gives it a 6845 video chip, which I think the Beep has.
I was going to say the same as the Beep.
And again, this is true two screen. So we have an 80-column text mode running over here, which is showing me what I'm plotting, and out here on the Dragon's original graphics screen, we've got the Mandelbrot that it's drawing. I started this when I got here at 9 AM. So
oh, really?
Yeah, it's taking its time, but yeah, it's a proper two-screen display. I would have loved this when I was a kid because I could have done all my programming here and I could have seen the graphics running on that. Yeah, that would have been my dream machine.
So that board, that was made at the time?
Yeah, 1984. So Amx Dragon Plus board.
Okay.
So yeah, it's a period thing.
Interesting. Wow.
Not many were made because it was in the dying days of the Dragon.
Right.
So and not many were sold. I mean, 1984, 1985. I think I was thinking about getting an Atari at that point. So they're quite rare. But yeah, quite powerful as well.
Very cool. Nice pair of Philips green screen monitors there as well.
Oh yeah. Moving on, so we've got the Sharp MZ80A, which is the successor to the MZ80K, which is possibly more common on these shores.
Yeah.
The MZ80K had like a shopping till keyboard. This has got a proper keyboard. It's a 48K machine. It's a Z80 driven, and like all the Sharp machines, it's got no built-in language, so you switch it on and it doesn't do anything until you load something off the tape.
Yeah.
So you've got a 6-minute wait while it loads basic. Now, like most of my machines, I've tinkered with this one. So careful when you stick your fingers inside this thing. So right at the back, you can't really see it. There's a colour card right at the back, which I'll come on to in a second. Okay. And underneath here, we've got an SD card packed full of ROM and RAM images. So that's where it's loading its software on, rather than fighting with the tape.
Yeah.
So this machine, when it was originally announced, they said you could upgrade it to colour. It would have a colour board. Right. And then they realised it would compete with this, their top-end machine, and that over there, the Sharp MZ700. So they hushed up and they never spoke of the board again.
Oh, really? Right.
But some clever guys in Japan found the schematics of the board, worked out how it should have worked, and have built it. So I've got a modern replica colour board inside it, which is what's driving my big Sony TV here. Yeah, I mean, it still has the same limitations that the Sharp does. There's no high-resolution graphics. It's all, little characters and things like that. So the games are quite cutesy.
So this game must have been written fairly recently then to take advantage of colour.
Because by the time you've got colour in one of these, it's basically one of these. Okay. So we can run most MZ700 software.
Okay, right.
So yeah, this is a period MZ700 game. Right. It just luckily seems to run in this configuration.
Yep. Interesting.
So this was the bottom of the range. This is the top of the range machine from the same period. So these are both 1982. This Sharp MZ2000, which is the big brother of your MZ80B, which you've got kicking around. Right. This one's also got colour, but this isn't. This is a period thing. This is from 1982. So again, it opens up like that. All that is there is video RAM. So there's 48K of video RAM lurking inside it.
Right.
And underneath that is the main motherboard with 64K. So that's 64 plus 48 is a number.
Yeah.
112. Yes, that much memory, but it's got proper bitmapped graphics and the color output as well.
Getting on that. That's pretty rapid as well, isn't it?
Yeah, it's at 4 megahertz Z80, so it's quite pokey.
Yeah. I like the cassette deck on it as well, because unlike the A and B and the Z, it's kind of vertical.
Yeah,
unusual.
Yeah.
And it's all electronic controlled as well.
It is. I won't eject it because I can't get the thing back in if I do. So,
but
it's all controlled.
Because the B was electronically controlled, wasn't it?
Yeah.
But the others were just mechanical keys.
Mechanical ones,
Yeah. Oh, very swish.
And a few more machines over here. Excuse me, Tim?
There aren't 100 bit. I just said he had a nose inside your machine. We think it's not the same one.
So, your computer, 1982, October 1982.
Yep.
I had this issue,
Right.
and I read every single advert, every single review, because my dad said I could have a colour computer for Christmas, and I had to choose which one.
Right.
So I read all these reviews, and basically, I lusted after all the computers on this cover, and now I own them all. But it took a while. It did take a while.
And you own the flags that.
Yes, so that's it. I have recreated the cover itself. And it's a funny old collection of machines, because obviously the only one that actually went on to be a proper success is the Commodore 64.
Yeah.
The rest kind of all disappeared without trace.
And is that the one you chose as a colour computer?
No, I wanted this one. I wanted this one, but my dad wouldn't get it because it was mail order only. And he didn't trust mail order. So in the end, I ended up with the Dragon because you could buy them from Boots. And if for some reason I broke it, he could take it back. That was the logic. So this Colour Genie kind of disappeared without trace. It's a fine machine, but nobody was that bothered by them.
I mean that's basically a Tandy Cocoa kind of thing.
Kind of. Yeah.
No? Not quite. Close but no cigar.
Yeah, because it's the video Genie, the machine that came before it, the one with the built-in tape deck. Yeah, that's a TRS-80 Model 1 clone.
Okay.
But this isn't a colour of the Cocoa.
Oh, okay.
Because this is Z80 based and the Cocoa is 6809.
Big difference.
So this is basically, it's a TRS-80 Model 1 with colour, which never happened from Tandy.
From them, yeah.
Yeah.
Right,
so
okay.
it's
interesting.
Yeah.
Big old lump of a machine.
Yeah, it's a fine machine, but nobody bought them, so there's very little for them out there. This weird little beastie here is an Apple II clone, kind of clone, about 85% of a clone.
Yeah, I've spoken to Dave about this one.
Yeah, you've already seen it?
Not quite the clone.
No, I think, because Multitech were a modem manufacturer, I think this is a modem case.
Could well be, yeah.
I think that's what's going on here.
But they have properly remoulded it though. They have done a new moulding, just modified an existing one rather than just cut into one.
And this little trio here all disappeared without trace.
Right.
To the extent that I thought these two might have just been mock-ups and they never actually existed.
Right.
But ultimately, I've tracked these two down in Japan.
Brilliant.
No, it wasn't a success. It wasn't even slightly a success, but it was actually sold.
Right.
You could buy them, just nobody did. It's Z80 based, uses the same graphics chip as the Dragon, and it's a bit useless.
Right.
So again, it was launched to unanimous apathy, basically.
Such a shame.
This is a cut down version of that.
Right.
So this is even worse. And
so I'm guessing then, bearing in mind it goes 25-20, that must be absolutely useless.
This is, look, no sockets.
No.
Nothing. Absolutely nothing. So you can't plug it into a TV. You can't save anything. You can't do anything. And when you turn it off, it forgets what's in it. So it's not even battery back. Well, I mean, it's batteries, but there's
I was going to say, there's not even a power supply connected.
No.
So it's purely battery oriented.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's amazingly useless.
I don't know, it's like a big version of the little Tandy calculators that you can program.
But even they could save the tape if you bought
This is true.
the right
Yeah.
gubbins.
Yeah.
It's
Interesting.
It's astonishing. I can see why they sold none of these.
I wonder what the thinking was behind it. What they thought they could use it for.
I think they obviously wanted a range. They wanted a range of computers, you know, bad, okay, good.
Yeah, but nobody designs a product to be bad. You know, there must be
Somebody
a
must have
reason
thought it
behind
was a good
that.
idea, but I'd love to meet that person.
Yeah.
I have no idea what they were thinking of.
Wow. Well, thank you very much indeed.
My pleasure.
And secondly, thanks for organising the event. Yeah, it's been a real success. Yesterday was incredibly busy, wasn't it?
Yeah, very busy indeed.
So, yeah, I really appreciate that. So, thanks a lot, Tony, and see you in the next one.
Oh, yes.
Okay, next up we have Roy.
Hello.
Commonly known as Loud Scots Bloke.
That's me.
On the Twitters.
That's absolutely me.
How you doing?
I'm not too bad, mate. Thoroughly
Good.
enjoying this weekend. It's been a bit quieter today on the Sunday, but Saturday was very busy. But it's great just seeing fellow retro entrepreneurs as well as members of the public asking so many questions, which is fantastic.
Yeah, it is. It's really nice. It's really nice, and everybody's put so much effort into getting these machines going, being sort of display order.
Yeah,
It's great.
yeah, I mean, it's so obviously, because I'm sure you've talked to other guys, the whole philosophy for today is 1982. So all of the machines I've brought today are celebrating their 40th birthday this year. But as a little bend of the rules, I've also brought some modern versions of that 80s technology just to show that we're still actually using some of this stuff even today.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's good to see people's memories of the original machines and then asking questions. So things like the Spectrum Next here. So it's I thought I'd bring the Spectrum Next. So I've been a Kickstarter 1 guy so I've had mine for quite a long time now. It's a shame that the Kickstarter 2 stuff's been delayed, but it's not their fault, so they will come. But I've had a lot of people come along and actually look at the machine and say, oh, it really exists.
And touch it. And
touch it. And it kind of leads on to, you know, it's what we're doing with that Spectrum technology. You'll see the original Spectrum I've got down there shortly. And so it's great to show them the original games running on the Next, but then giving them the advantages of what the Next is now offering. It's also a bit weird to think that for such a new machine that it's already sparked its own clones. So this rather lovely white machine is a Spectrum Ngo, which is a clone of the Next.
I actually didn't know that. I did not know there was a clone out. I was going to ask you about it specifically, but that's interesting, isn't it?
It is interesting. It's a nice machine. In fact, they are identical in that you can actually use the same firmware on that as you can on the Next. I haven't. I've left the Ngo one on there just so it boots up with the Ngo logos. But yeah, it's effectively a Spectrum Next.
Clone, wow. It never stops, does it?
No. So that's it.
Did not know that happened. Right.
And then getting back to our real passions, of course, is the machines from the 80s. So as I say, they're all celebrating their 40th birthday. So we got the Auric 1. I didn't bring an Atmos because it came out in 83.
Right, that would cheat.
So the Auric 1 with a slightly poorer keyboard came out in 1982. So lovely machine. It was a direct competitor with the Spectrum. In fairness, it's probably better than the Spectrum, but because it came out at a higher price point, more people bought Spectrums.
Not having it.
Nah.
Explain yourself.
Well, if you look at it on paper, it's 6502 based.
The old 6502 Z80 wars still live on. All right.
I'm just.
No, you're gonna have to convince me. You're gonna have to convince me more.
So AY sound, RGB out. Terrible keyboard.
Yeah, but they both had terrible keyboards. Well, you know.
Slightly less terrible keyboard.
Well, as I've now mentioned 3 times within the thing today, the Spectrum keyboard is probably one of the best, rubber keyboards that there was. Actually, we slate it. But when everybody else tried to do that, they never made it quite as good as the Spectrum.
So I will caveat that. Because I've got a couple of machines which I think are nicer than the Spectrum from a chiclet rubber keyboard point of view.
Right.
And the first one is the Sega SC3000. It's a lovely chiclet rubber keyboard.
Okay.
But even better than that is the Panasonic JR200.
Don't even know what that is.
So it's nice and soft with a nice amount of travel, but it's rubber in the same kind of like the Sword M5, which is there, but with the same amount of travel as the Spectrum. So it's quite nice.
That's the thing with the Spectrum, is the amount of travel. I think that is the difference. That's what made it better than most, then, not all.
Well, it's better than an Aquarius, let's put it that way. And I'm the defender of the Aquarius, and yet, the keyboard, well.
Okay, but yeah, I mean, the AY sound and the RGB output, I suppose that does give the Yorick that step up from the Spectrum.
But it was more expensive. It was more expensive.
Yeah,
so
I mean,
more people bought the Spectrum.
Yeah, Cambridge machine though, which is
Cambridge
nice.
Machine, Cambridge machine.
But yeah, it wasn't as popular as the Spectrum by any means, unfortunately.
No. And a slightly odd footprint as well. But
I quite like it because it
everything's upside down inside.
Yes, because the keyboard is part of that board.
Which is slightly odd, but
but
nice,
it does sort of present itself to you. It leans towards you.
It leans towards you.
It's nice and
I like the colour scheme.
ergonomic. Yeah, cool.
But if you want to go ahead and talk about poor keyboards, the Jupiter Ace. Now, my Jupiter Ace, yes, it's quite a rare machine. Yes, it uses fourth, but that keyboard, oh man, shit, that is a terrible, terrible, terrible keyboard.
Yeah, poor old Jupiter Ace. It was brave. That's the thing about that machine. It was very, very brave.
It was a brave machine.
Fourth was not the language that people gelled with.
Fast, I'll give it that. As a language, it was fast. Probably 5 to 10 times quicker than BASIC, so you can see where the appeal was, but much harder to get your head around. Reverse Polish notation as well, so difficult to get your head around. However, we do have a modern equivalent. We've got the Tynemouth Minstrel Fourth.
Okay.
So this is a modern recreation of the Jupiter Ace with an edge connector so that you can run the RC 2014 backplane peripherals.
Oh, I didn't know that. That's awesome.
Yeah. So what I've got plugged in here is an SD card reader for a Jupiter Ace. Or for a Minstrel.
Excellent.
Yeah, so that we can start to leverage. I've also got an add-on which will let you use USB keys and also a USB keyboard. So you can actually develop on a real Jupiter Ace, but with a modern keyboard.
Impressive.
So again, it's just showing that we're still using this technology 40 years on to do stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. There's so much going on in the community at the moment, with developments and things. I'm not sure about that keyboard though.
No, so that keyboard is not very, it's okay, but that's why, so I've actually got it buried in a box. I haven't taken it out, but I do have an additional card which will let me plug in a normal PC USB keyboard. Yeah.
Brilliant. Good stuff.
Thank you.
What else do we have?
So we have the fantastic Sharp MZ700 in its glorious, weighs about the same as a Volkswagen footprint.
They were heavy.
And again, so celebrating its 40th birthday this year. I quite like this particular machine because it doesn't have any bitmap capability.
No, it doesn't.
A bit like the Aquarius, in that it's a character-based machine. But you might think that would stifle it in the games market, but no. Hundreds of games came out for this machine, and believe it or not, they're actually really good. Yeah, you see, you're shaking your head. They're really good. There's a version of Arkanoid for this, and it really is Arkanoid. It's not a clone, it's Tato's Arkanoid. It's really good.
How can this be? So, I went over to my uncle's. He bought one, and I was quite excited because he had a new computer in quotes that I had, whatever it was at the time, I can't remember. But I was quite underwhelmed by it back then.
Wow.
There was some sort of hangman things done with the character graphics and stuff. Nothing really that great. So is this software, these games were released back then?
Yeah, they were. They use their 80s. There's some modern games like Beyond, which has came out fairly recently, which is really nice. But most of them, the thing is, you got to remember that I like the oddballs and the underdogs.
Me too.
And this was a bit of an underdog, and it was an expensive underdog when it came out.
It was expensive. And to be fair, he was using it because just in that area there, for anybody that doesn't know, you could have a little printer. It was as a plotter actually. So he bought it specifically because it had this little plotter function in front, in in the top.
Yeah.
That were all options and things. And yeah, so he was using it for sort of business purposes in a way. But as a young lad at that time, I was sort of thoroughly underwhelmed by it. I couldn't actually say that to him at that time. I hope he doesn't watch this video now.
In fairness, if you compare it to the other machines from 82, you can see that it is quite poor.
Right.
Because you don't have that bitmap ability. You're not getting sprites. You're not getting. The sound is okay. The sound is okay. But yeah, it is quite let down. But I quite like it because it's quirky. You really have to use your imagination in some of these games.
Middle vision for the games. Vision. That's what you've you've got to imagine it.
She's still here and running 40 years later. And it's good. It's good to use. I had it on this monitor yesterday, but today I've got the MPF2 on this monitor.
Right.
So we've got a microprocessor MPF2. I'm surprised that we've actually got 2 of these today.
We've got 3 of these.
Have we got 3?
Yeah, there's another one over there.
Oh right.
Yeah, but 2 working anyway.
So these are great little machines with a very bizarre footprint. In old modem cases, basically. But you know, it's got some sort. I mean, that's Hero running on it, which is nice. It was. You've probably heard the story before, but it was actually sold as an Apple II clone, but it's far from an Apple II clone. So it will run Apple Basic, let you do various bits and bobs. However, any machine code applications will not run on this because the memory map's different.
Totally different.
Most peripherals for the Apple II will not plug into this. It just can't see them. So calling it an Apple II clone was probably a bit. That was just to get sales.
Pushing it a bit. Yeah, absolutely.
Just to get sales.
By the time they've realised that, once they've bought it, it's too late.
Yeah, absolutely. So we've got another 2 beasties here. Just move my coffee. So I've got to get my teeth in to give it its whole name. We have the Iaeka EG2000 Color Genie.
Yeah.
So it's one of those where the name just rolls off your tongue, doesn't it?
Marketing department didn't have much to do with it, did they? But I was speaking to Tony about this. I thought this was a Coco clone, effectively, but apparently it's not.
They're not. So it's almost.
Yeah.
Almost. Because what they really did was look at what they were doing with the Tandys and the colour computers there, and looked at what they could do to improve that. So Iaeka, because that came out as it was a fairly expensive machine when it came out, and they were trying to say that you don't want to buy a Coco when you can buy this, when it can give you all these additional functions. So it's actually got a couple more resolutions which are higher than the Coco, and a couple more colour modes which are kind of cheating because they're really half bright, if you know what I mean.
Right.
But utilise them in games.
Right.
So it's okay. It's a nice machine. It's a robust machine. It's got a certain Commodore 64 air about it in its design.
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah,
with the F keys at the side there, and
at the side, and the everybody thinks there's a speaker there, but there isn't. It's just a hole.
I didn't know that. I assumed there probably was.
Nope. Speaker comes out your TV. It's an RCA.
Right.
I can only assume the original design maybe had a speaker in there.
Yeah. I think so.
But no longer. And then we got this lovely little machine. Aesthetically, I love.
Yeah, it does look cool. Yeah. Sanyo are good at design.
Let me just move this cover. So yeah. Now it's actually quite similar in a way to the new Brain, in that it's a triple motherboard that's in here. It's a 3-layer.
Really hard to work on.
Yeah, I mean it's such a small form factor. I don't know if you can let go of the camera for a second, but if you feel there's a fair amount of heft.
Right. Just showing everybody the weight of it. I don't know if that works on camera.
Showing everybody the weight, brilliant. And so it does make it a bit of a nightmare when something goes wrong. To try
that is heavier than I expected.
Work on these machines.
Yeah, that does make them difficult.
It's quite a nice machine. It's where's Tony? I don't want him to hear me. What I'm going to say
is miles away.
Right, because it's slightly hampered by the fact that it's got a 6847 graphics chip in there. So it's lovely and green. However, you do get a much nicer picture out of it than you do with the Dragon.
It's all right, I take the mick out of Dragon all the time.
But these are not 6809s, these are Z80 machines.
Right. Yeah.
So it's
very cool.
It's lovely. Nice little form factor there. We've then got 2, they're basically 2 Sword M5s with different badges on.
Okay, but different colouring as well.
I mean, so I'll explain that in a second. So in the European market, the Sword M5 came out as a CGL M5.
Yeah, that's what I recognise.
So we recognise hence the CGL name there. This one, so this one came out after, and it was actually badged as the M5 Pro.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Pro.
Yeah, Pro. However, there's nothing pro about it at all. In fact, there's nothing different about it at all apart from the colour.
No way.
Yeah.
There's no electronic difference.
One. The motherboard is a cost-reduced, fewer component board. That's it.
Wow.
That's it. And yet it was sold as the Pro.
Incredible.
Incredible, isn't it? And they did that because they were just trying to get into the business market and, believe it or not, schools. So they just tacked on the Pro name in the hope that it would sell more. It didn't.
Well, you know, probably everybody saw through that.
Yeah, it didn't.
I mean, I can understand the schools market. I can't really understand the business market much, but you know, we all have a trier.
Yeah.
And what have we got in here?
So that's a multi-cart. So there was about 50 games or so that came out for the Sword, and you would either load those one at a time through a cartridge or through cassette, like you normally did in the 80s. But fortunately, we've got some very clever people out there that are designing multi-carts. So this has actually got every game that ever came out for it, and you just choose the one you want, and you get nice fast load times. So if you want Moon Patrol, you get Moon Patrol.
Great. We need one of those. Are these still available?
Yes. Sell My Retro.
Oh, okay.
That's a Sir Morris cartridge.
Oh, well, we've got Charlie's original version where you had to sort of do it all on the cartridge yourself.
No, it's all software driven.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Right. I'll have, Charlie, I'm coming to find you. We need one. But
lovely.
Cool. Yeah, good stuff.
Yeah, and so in the same vein that I was showing the Spectrum next, what we actually have here is a modern incarnation of the Commodore 64. So this is not the 64, it's the C64. Yes. The trouble is, I
don't know much about them, to be honest. What do you think?
I wanted to hate it, but I actually love it.
Really?
I do. I have to say I love it, and it's because it's a real keyboard. And the way in which I've configured this machine to boot, I just get it to boot into the normal basic blue screen, not any of the fancy menus or anything like that.
Right.
But to have HDMI and USB and things is very handy.
Yeah, of course.
It'll never replace my original 64. It never will. But as a package to actually show off what we're doing in a modern age with emulation, it's actually very good.
No, fair play.
Yeah,
everything's got its place in all of this, and convenience is an important part of it.
It is sometimes. I didn't bring my original 64 because I thought a lot of people are going to bring 64s because they all came out in 82.
But there's not that many.
Exactly, and I'm kicking myself for not bringing my original 64.
We've got our one out, so at least it's represented somewhere. But
however, at least my Spectrum is original. There's no alterations on her at all, and you'll see that I've brought my original 1981 black and white portable.
Was that yours?
Yeah.
Oh, nice.
Now, because even though we had the colour Spectrum in 1982, I didn't know anybody who had a colour portable.
I agree.
You weren't allowed to lose it in the living room.
Yep.
You couldn't use it in the living room. You had to take it to your bedroom. That's what we had. Right?
I totally agree.
So you played Manic Miner in black and white. You played Chucky Egg in black and white.
Completely. Yep, totally agree. It's something that I struggle to get across when we're doing tours and things here at the museum. Is that televisions back then were expensive.
Yeah.
My family didn't have one.
Yeah.
Well, we didn't have one. We didn't own one. We rented it.
Like everybody did.
So
when or somewhere like that, or Granada.
Rumbelows and all those kind of places.
We were the same.
So the TV or my VIC-20 that I had back then, it was plugged into the main TV in the living room. We didn't have a portable.
Right.
I wasn't flavour of the month at all. Because you were taking over the TV.
Absolutely. And although mine was connected to my Aquarius, my mates had Speckies, and that's how you actually realise to a certain degree why the colour palette on the Spectrum is the way it is, because look at it in black and white.
Still looks good.
It's lovely. You can identify
lots of contrast. No, absolutely. I think that's a really important thing to get across to people that weren't there in the day. Is that we didn't have the tech that we have around us today. We certainly didn't have sort of spare colour televisions kicking around in bedrooms or spare rooms and stuff. So
you did not.
No, I certainly used.
So that's been a big draw today. So it's right beside the door. People have just homed straight in straight on the specky in black and white, and that's been great. That's
a nice little touch. Love it.
Yeah, I love it. I love it.
Cool.
And I've even got a box. That's a boxed 16K Spectrum in there. So they didn't live very long before they all got converted to 48s. So it was a nice find, that one.
Yeah, definitely. And it's such an iconic box because it was the box that you saw when you went in the shops, Boots and W.H. Smiths and things.
That's it. You saw.
That was what you saw on the shelf.
Yeah, I want that.
Mum, Dad, can I get one of them?
Yeah, can I
absolutely.
Have one of them? Yeah.
Brilliant. Well, thanks for bringing all this along today and yesterday, and really appreciate it.
You're most welcome.
And hopefully we'll see you at the next one.
You definitely will.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thanks, mate.
So last on the exhibition today, last but not least, is Adrian.
Hello.
How you doing?
Not so bad, thanks. Yeah, good weekend.
Good. Yeah, it has. It's been really good.
Very exhausting, but very much worth it at the same time.
Yeah, I've managed to get you. You've been busy a lot, so I've managed to get in and chat with you. So we're getting towards the end of the event now. But anyway, I've managed to grab you for a couple of minutes. So tell me about what you brought here along today.
Right. Well, as you know, this is celebrating the 40th anniversary of anything that we had in our collections, and because everybody else got in first with all the common stuff, that left me with what I had in my collection that wasn't necessarily things that anybody else would have.
Yeah.
So going from right to left, you've got the Iaeka Genie Iii, which built on the Genie I, the Video Genie, otherwise known as the Dick Smith System 80 in Australia. And it's a lovely machine on paper. Boots 4 operating systems. It's a 64K CPM machine at its heart, but it will boot timed operating systems, and you just feed it a different disk. It boots.
Nice. Interesting.
Excellent machine. And there's facilities out the back for extra hard drives and the advert for the machine. Just a pity it was short-lived because it was released at exactly the same time as the Colour Genie.
Right.
And they were both equally as popular as each other. So they both pretty much sank without a trace.
I mean, this was definitely aimed at the business market, wasn't it?
Oh, definitely.
I mean, this is a fairly big lump. It's probably quite hard to tell from the video, but this has taken up a good part of the desk. Probably weighs a ton. Metal case, is it?
No, plastic.
It is plastic.
It needs to be light.
Oh, okay.
They got that right.
Yeah. And
otherwise, yes, it would weigh a ton.
But yeah, we've got fun 4-inch floppy disks there.
Twin floppy drives. The floppy controller on it has single density and double density controllers aboard.
Right.
So it'll try and boot one, and if it doesn't work, it'll boot off the other one.
Okay.
And self-test routines built in, so you can test the RAM and do ROM checksums and things before it starts. And yeah, really nice machine.
Yes.
Just a pity nobody bought one.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, there were a lot of also-rans in this era. So many people producing machines with their own weird and wonderful ideas for what is the right way to do it. It's kind of like we were still learning what a computer should be, you know, because there were so many different things going on and so many standards.
Well, that was a Ken Olsen thing, wasn't it? When he said best thing about standards is there's so many to choose from.
Yeah.
Which is a perfect metaphor for the Rainbow and the Sirius, which we'll come to in a minute. This Genie Iii is the only one I know of in this country.
Right, yeah, I've never seen one before. I've never seen one.
I know there's 2 in Belgium.
Right.
But that's it. So any more information about the video subsystem would be very handily known because that one was gutted.
Right.
So I'm sort of reverse engineering and making it up as I go along.
Okay.
But it's a black and white telly, so you know, any 12-inch screen. It's currently borrowing the CRT from one of my Super Brains. Just so it's complete.
Yeah. Okay, so that's a work in progress.
Very much so.
Right.
As is the one next to it.
I was going to say, and there's another work in progress here. Tell me about this one, because this is a monster.
The Positron 9000, designed by a chap called Peter Plinston in Newton the Willows, and based around the Motorola reference design for a 6809 MMU powered multi-user Unix machine.
Right.
So it's very much the. He basically took the reference design and put it on a board, and thanks to that, that's how we know as much about this machine as we do.
Yeah, yeah.
Because this is the only one known to exist. There was another one sold in 2019, 2018. Missing a few keys, but condition unknown otherwise.
Right.
And it disappeared. Whoever bought it put it on a shelf, and
nothing heard from them since.
That's nothing heard from them since. Which is a shame.
Can we get the lid down on it so we can see what it would have looked like from the outside?
What can you do is we've had this dust it off. We've had this for 4 years. There you go.
Without collapsing the table.
I was going to say you need to tip the table with it.
It's that one that's got the support under it.
Right. So that is a beast. So yeah, I mean, it looks pretty cool though. I do like it.
That's the whole reason it was saved, because this one lived in a shed on its side, and it was eaten for 20 years by mice, incontinent mice. So the power supply was a health hazard when I took it out.
Right.
The chap who saved it would have seen the coloured keys and thought, oh, I like that, I'm having that.
Yeah.
Stick that on eBay.
Yeah.
But what he didn't see, which may have been there, was the boxes that sit on top. So there was a separate box with 2 floppy drives in it.
Right.
And then another box that sat on top of that with a hard drive in it.
Oh no.
All powered off the IEEE bus.
Right.
But fortunately you can boot them, it's got OS 9 level 2 in ROM.
Right.
So you can configure it to boot from ROM rather than booting from one of the hard drives. Which is good, because there aren't any hard drives or anything else or any software known to exist.
No.
Other than what's on the ROM.
Yeah, yeah.
So this one's very much a grow up in the dark, reverse engineer, draw out the schematic while I'm working on it. And yeah, it's a shame that it was the initial plan for it was for schools.
Really?
Yeah. Which is weird that it has this whole front.
Yeah.
Is a view data terminal.
I was going to say, you can tell with the keys that that's view data oriented.
Yeah, so you've got the latches for reveal and double width, double height and all that.
Right.
As well as the colour editors.
Yeah.
So this was just a terminal for the board.
Right.
You could buy the box itself without the terminal. And just plug a standard serial terminal up it.
Right.
And drive it that way. 4 RS-232 ports on the back for driving RS-232 terminals on it.
Yep.
Your ADM-3As and your BT-100s, that sort of thing. But like I say, it's the only one now that we know exists.
Yeah.
And I've gone through all sorts of mechanisms trying to find Peter, who designed it, and I've got a horrible feeling. I really hope this isn't true, but I've got a horrible feeling that it was him that bought that other one.
Oh.
Just to get one of his own machines back.
Okay.
Perhaps.
Maybe. It's possible.
And there's a slight chance he may no longer be with us.
Yeah, yeah.
As of about January 2021.
Right. Well.
So that would be a shame if that's true.
Yeah, it would.
I really hope it isn't.
But fingers crossed you can sort of make contact somehow. Maybe if somebody's watching this, they might be able to point us in the right direction.
That's why I keep bringing it to these things. This is the second time it's been out.
Yep.
In the hope that somebody walks past and goes, oh, I used one of them.
Yeah.
And they could give me a bit of, even how they used it and what they used it for. So it was all business applications.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, Pascal, Basic, Fortran, and the word processing and all that. So it's just standard business stuff. So I think that there was just the size of it that stopped schools going, yeah, we'll have one of them. Just a bit too big.
Well,
needed to reinforced desk.
Yeah, I mean, and also, that kind of size, when that had outlived its useful life, it would have been headed for the skip. It's not the sort of stuff you can keep around, is it? It's huge.
I did find a local news report from something like the Lytham St Anne's Daily that said the factory was in Newton Le Willows, and they were selling up to 35 of these a week. But the question question is to who? And like you say, the size of them means they probably were all binned.
Yeah.
Like nobody's going to take one of those home.
With such a business orient to it, that's the sort of organisation that's going to bin them when they're out of use. So, shame. I mean, so much of our computing history has been lost to that kind of thing already.
Yes. And the other thing that makes it difficult to find is, of course, when you Google positron, you get all the scientific stuff.
Right.
So trying to separate all of that.
Yeah, weed out
from
the one specifically for computing. Yeah, right.
Quite difficult.
Yeah,
but no,
indeed. Labour of love for sure.
Very much so.
Right. So, what else do we have here? Because this is something I do recognise.
You've got one of these.
We have got one of these.
This is the Microworld Micro B. Or Applied Technology was the original company. Applied Technology Pty in Australia. This was effectively a school's computer.
Yeah.
They won. It was a kit originally, and then they won the Australian Computers for Schools. So Owen Hill was the owner of the company. Decided he'd better get a nice case for it and a nice keyboard, and they sold thousands of them and released several different models after that. So this is known as the ROM Micro B, 16K, 32K or 64K on separate boards. There's a core board at the bottom and then a RAM board across the top, all on 6116 2K RAM. So you could just take your 16K RAM board off, throw it away, put a 32K RAM board.
Right.
And there was a colour option with these that I think was MDA compatible. And then they moved up to the Premier 128K and then TC256. And it was a real Australian success story.
Yes, yeah, I mean it was the Australian BBC Micro, it's the equivalent, used in schools all over the place as
it was only usurped by the Apple II, or yeah, it must have been the Apple II. They eventually lost the territory to that, and then they expanded out into the home market and produced all those other models.
Yeah.
It's a good history to have.
Yeah, interesting stuff. Okay, moving on.
Then the heavy table with the support under it. We've got the DEC Rainbow 100B digital equipment attempt at a PC in 1982.
This was two things, wasn't it? It was the PC and it was the CPM. Is that right?
Yes.
So it had,
and it's terminal as well.
Yeah.
So it's built in VC220, and it's got a 8088 and a Z80 on board.
Yep.
So it'll run CPM 80, CPM 86, and DOS. This one's got a Seagate ST412 in it, which DEC sold, I believe, as the RD51. And it's partitioned into two, boot partition and a data partition. And this one was given to me by a customer of mine in the late 90s, early 90s. He just knocked on my door and said, "Do you want this?" Go on then.
Yeah, absolutely.
Why not? It's still running that configuration now, or it would be if it hadn't died this morning.
Yeah, this was working, it has to be said, and it's such a shame that it's passed away during the exhibition. But
what a way to go on its 40th birthday.
Well, yeah, this is true. Yeah, but if anybody's going to get it working again, it's going to be you. So
I'll have a
hopefully it won't be something that bad. There's a lot of these screens that have also delaminated as well, so it's nice to see.
They get bad
yours
cataracts.
is. Yeah,
I've got one that has.
Yeah, so have we.
I've also got an amber one and a couple of green ones.
Right.
But the cataract one, that's going to stay cataract, I think.
Yeah, there's not. Well, there is something you can do about it, but I'm not brave enough to do it.
Me neither.
It involves hot guns on
hot
CRT
guns,
tubes.
Hot wire.
Yeah.
Hot wire to cut the glass.
Yep.
And then you've got to clean off all the gunk.
Yep.
And get all the glue residue off the CRT.
Yep.
I mean, the thing is just a plastic plate that protects you from damage if the tube implodes for whatever reason.
I was going to say, but how many times has that ever happened?
I don't think it ever has.
But anyway.
Have you ever tried smashing one of those voluntarily?
Not voluntarily, no.
It's hard work.
In anger every few days. Moving on.
Know that feeling.
Then we have the Sirius here.
Finally, the Act Sirius one. Designed by Chuck Peddle, of course, who gave us the 6502 processor and the Commodore PET.
Yeah, great.
Beautiful machine, absolutely beautiful machine.
Yeah, they are very, very nice.
My favourite one here.
Is it?
It's also the one I've spent, aside from the positron, I've spent the most time fixing this one.
All right.
So it was very broken when I got it. And yeah, 8088 CPU, so it runs CPM86 and DOS. This one actually runs DOS 3. It's got the very latest ROM that was available, the BIOS.
Right.
So it will quite happily boot DOS 3. Expandable up to 892K rather. So nearly the full megabyte. It's got 4 option slots in it. So you could put in extra memory modules, there was hard drive modules available, and a third-party company produced a PC compatible disk card.
Right.
So you could take a standard IBM 3.5-inch floppy drive and plug it into this card for data transfer because these things use multi-speed, multi-zone GCR encoded floppies. For years, the only way of getting data on and off it was either serial out the back using Kermit or another Sirius. And it's only in the last 6 months that the techniques have moved forward. So now you can actually make boot disks for these without having one.
Just using a grease weasel.
Grease weasel will do it.
Yeah, that's been a massive advancement because, like you say, you were just so stuck otherwise.
Yeah.
So
very much.
It's made it much more usable now.
Thanks to Keir Fraser for the grease weasel and David Given for the flux engine. And Chris Osborne and Fostex for actually doing the groundwork in getting this thing going in the first place. So. But yes, it's a really nice machine.
Yeah, indeed.
And it also speaks to you. I think you had
a little demo.
Dave's talking to you yesterday.
Yeah, we have a little demo.
I've only got the Star Trek version, so it just says this is the Star Trek Enterprise.
But it's quite interesting. Even though it's a real voice, it sounds very synthesised.
Well,
the sample rate is so low.
It's just a standard VOC. Recorded sample.
Yeah.
But it's just the fact that the codec was built in.
I didn't know that. I didn't know that until he told me.
Yeah.
So very impressive.
Graphics as well, when everything else was like 80 by 24 text. This one would quite happily do 800 by 400 high res.
Again, incredibly impressive for the time.
What Dave's showing there with the draw program.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's a beautiful machine.
They're very nice. And there's another one over there on display at the museum, which
I thought I was being clever by bringing a white one.
Well, the thing is, yours works. If there's a little nudge for you, if you fancy having a look.
Well,
now you've learned from yours.
I'm right in the flow. I've fixed all 3 of mine.
Right.
So yeah, I can have a look at that.
I know it doesn't work, but I don't know why it doesn't work. We haven't looked to see why. So
it might be some reefers out the power supply.
It might be the fuse for all I know. So we just plugged it in, it doesn't work. So we'll have a look at some point, and then
I'll have a look at it at some point.
Yeah, awesome. Well, thank you very much for bringing these in today. Really, really appreciate it.
No problem.
A great collection, and
thanks for letting me bring them out.
Yeah. Well, it's
my spine thanks you.
I'm sure it doesn't. Anyway, thank you very much. Cheers. Adrian. Bye bye.